Rob. How you doing, my brother?
What's up, man? How you doing, sir?
Good, good. Great to hear from you and see you.
I know, man.
How's the evening going for you?
Man, it's going pretty good, man. Just spent some time with the kids, and
Good.
now we're just kind of, still away for a little bit,
Yeah. No,
How things down there?
they're doing great. We were able to sneak away. I appreciate you kind of moved the time back for me, which was great. Had a meeting in the end of the day that ran a little late, and then my kids, I told them we'd take them to kind of our favorite wing place tonight. So I was like, man, if I could just get that extra 30 minutes, I know I can slide in and slide out. I love wings. And down here,
I'm the same way, brother.
Wings are like one of my favorite things, but I have to have a certain way. Like if you go in, like I'm not a big fan of places that do like 50 different things, pizza, quesadillas, and all this, and wings. Like they just spreaded. Like I want a wing place that knows how to. I need the wing joint.
Real wing. I know what you're talking about. You want the real wing joint.
Right. I gotta have it. And so,
well, we got plenty of them up here in Atlanta.
I know. Trust me. Down here, we got like one. I know my joint. That's the one I go is my joint. And they know my name. It's like Cheers. They know who we are. I just sit down. They bring me whatever. They know our order and our drinks. So but I knew I could get in and out easy. So we had a good meal. And
you gotta love it, man.
Yeah, my kids, I think are probably a little older than yours. I've got a 16-year-old, a 14-year-old, and then soon to be 12-year-old. So they're a junior in high school, freshman in high school, and a seventh grader. So
well, you're almost there. I'm just starting out.
That's right.
My oldest is about to turn 5, and my youngest he's about to turn 1 in about a week.
Yep. So 5-year-old for your oldest, and that's a daughter, right?
Yeah.
And then your son is how old again?
He'll be 1 on the 20th, so next week. 1
year. And when is it that you stop counting the months? I know it's still like 12 months. Like the Y's will go to like 18 months.
They're going like 18,
they'll go forever. Yeah, they'll go forever.
I just say he's almost a year.
Right. You guys were like this a year. I'm done with the months. I did 10 months. I did 11 months, but I'm at a year. I'm good.
Man, listen, after 6 months, I was like,
Yeah. Well, I don't know what it is with us, but we get stumped on dates. My wife and I love to celebrate all the little things. So we were high school sweethearts. So we do when we met, our first year anniversary, all these like weird little things. And so it's hard. I mean, fortunately, smartphones have helped me. So, plugging things into a calendar and setting reminders is a big key for marriage.
Yes, sir. I can agree. I can attest to that as well, man.
Yeah.
I really can.
So Rob, we're here talking and doing this, and I really appreciate you coming on. I've kind of started calling this thing kind of polling faith. The idea that what's the temperature of faith out there? What are we going through? And I know you've hit me up a little bit about some of the videos I've done in the past and some of the work with, just trying to understand the conversation with Black Lives Matter and things around that. Yeah. I know you've got a church there just on the south side of Atlanta. You're kind of right on that southern crescent, what I like to call. Of Atlanta, and you've been doing some incredible work. And coincidentally, this is probably the first time we've actually chatted face to face. I mean, we've had some messages, we shared some comments, we've done things, but we really kind of started following each other on social media because we had a mutual friends of ours that went to a church that I grew up in. I think met you, and I was doing a church in Atlanta, and they were like, "Hey, you guys sound like you're both outside the box." And
it was kind of like the same thing. Yeah.
So, and I've really enjoyed watching what you do and how you do it, and what's going on with you. But I've also followed some of your progression. I mean, because you've had buildings, you've lost buildings.
Yeah.
You've done some home church stuff, which I thought was, super unique. I mean, it's like you really have been outside the box. I mean, true discipleship and trying things and working through things. And but while we're here, I know we talked a little bit about your children, but maybe, maybe how long you've been married, how long you've been doing the church, what's the name of the church? Let's give just a little bit of background on some of this stuff.
Okay. Well, name of the church is the Bar Church. Stands for Believers Authority Restored. A lot of people wonder, what does it mean raising the bar or something like that? But no, like the actual concept is kind of like a bar, mainly because there are people that won't go to a church with a steeple with pews for whatever reason.
Yeah.
So we wanted to have a place where, because we understand it's not about the actual place, it's about how people can connect with God. And a lot of people, just like guys, they go to happy hour or something, they go to the bar, they talk to the bartender and those type of things. So it really is built on that concept, and us even building out our building just to kind of look like that. Me and my wife have been pastoring it since 2015. 2015 is when we started, September 2015. And it's definitely been a roller coaster.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
And you definitely saw, we started out in this huge, massive building. I mean, I still believe it was a blessing, but things just didn't go the way we really wanted them to go. So we did move around a couple times. The most recent time, we were, like you said, we were doing house church, and that was something I admittedly 100% did not want to do. It took my entire team and my wife to say, look, we're going to do house church.
My wife usually knows what's up, right? Man, I tell you though, there has to be some like crazy stories out of doing house church, and people that showed up that you never thought would show up, and people that were getting, a message that they never thought. I mean, just breaking this wall of church down, It
was crazy. How about like, my wife operates really heavily in the prophetic, and so I'm getting there. And we have several healings and stuff, like just God really shows up in different ways. And so one day we went into church, and it was like I started ministering, and somehow or another it just kind of like took a hard left, and I started just talking about prophecy and things like that. And God was just like, hey, ask this person, they have a word. And it was somebody who just doesn't really speak. And I said, hey, well, God said you had something. And she opened her mouth. And when she opened her mouth, it was like it went from her to another person, to another person, to another person. My cousin, who's probably the biggest introvert that you would ever meet in your life, he stood up and he prophesied over 3 people, spot on. Tears were flowing, and he was just looking like, I can't believe that this is really going on, and it was something that God shared with me. And to connect with it, God said, the revival people are expecting isn't going to be in the church, it's going to be in their home. And it made me sit back and think like, man, we've been sitting here, praying God bring a revival and thinking that it's going to happen in church. But he just gave me something that I really believe he kind of gave me a peek into, saying when people live their lives and they're connected to God at home, then they're going to start seeing these things, and they're going to start feeling even more connected to me at home. This is way before even the idea that everybody was going to be worshiping at home,
pre-COVID
pandemic, So I'm sitting here like, man, now I'm getting, I think he's just opening it up a little bit. But yeah, we've just had some amazing God experiences in the household that actually set us up for our new building,
What's crazy about that is that I always feel like life change happens the best in smaller settings. And I think, a lot of churches that really try to do it right, I attend now I actually do a lot of home stuff here at the house, and my wife makes a big breakfast, and the kids and I get around and we watch North Point live, and with Andy Stanley's group, and then he gives out 3 questions, and so then we as a family talk about it. Which for me, I haven't, there were times in my life, especially when I was doing churches, that I didn't have that time to be with my family. And so now that my kids are going through this teen years and having this time to really talk to them about these things and have these questions, honestly, it's probably the best church I've ever done. But, you know, I find, and I know North Point says something that it's circles are better than rows. So it's the idea around getting around people, but I think you're hitting something there that, you know, all of this stuff, social unrest. I mean, the racial divide we have in what's going on. I mean, none of this is going to be, you know, figured out because we statistically look at it and we say, well, you know, this person's killed more, this person's killed more. These are you know, whatever. We're never going to get through this unless we actually talk to each other, right? We're never going to get through this unless we actually say, hey, what is going on with you? I always found in the church that, and I have a lot of LGBTQ friends and love them to death. And I always find that sometimes my Christian friends are like, well, let me ask you all these questions. And they have these different stances in that environment all the way until they have a child that is LGBTQ or all the way until they have something, you know, and interestingly enough, the last talk I had was with interracial marriages. And it was so interesting. One of the couples talked about how they had that one of the parents, one of the white lady, one of the wife was her dad had kind of disowned her and he didn't want to say anything bad to upset her. And they finally started talking after the kids.
Of course.
Right? Because that brings you back around. You're like, well, okay.
Yeah.
I need to dive in. And that's when heart change happens, is when you finally, you know, when it hits home, you're like, okay, well, I can't ignore this issue. You know, if it doesn't affect you, you can say, I don't believe it. I'm not about it. I'm not going to deal with it. And you can have all the memes and the posts and all the stuff that we do. But when it hits you at home, it's like totally different. And so, you know, you've been doing the church for a long time and man, doing a lot of stuff. I love hearing about the prophecy stuff you're doing. I love hearing about the home church you're doing. Which, by the way, if you're watching this and you're going prophetic stuff, I get it. Rob and I both would probably agree that it's weird. And, you know, if you're coming in, it can blow you away, and we get it and all that. It's not something that I think you see even in the American church a ton. Right. But what I found when I was doing especially homeless things is I saw a lot more spiritual warfare go on when you have nothing, right? When you got when you're really broken, when you're all the way down, there were a lot more of the stranger things that come out. But you know, we get Americanized in our church, and if you don't have a coffee bar or a donut shop, I mean, which is okay, by the way. Churches have those. I mean, I love you too, so I'm not hating on the coffee bars. I'd like to have coffee at church too. So.
Yeah, same here. I mean, you know, and it's not like our church isn't. It's not because sometimes when you say things like prophetic or speaking in tongues, people think that it's just like just this outrageous disorder.
Right.
Our church is just so different because I come from a teaching background. Like that's my gift is teaching.
Yep.
My wife comes from more of a preaching background, but as far as like prophetic, that's something that neither one of us really were, you know, thinking about or anything like that. But when, like you say, when you start associating yourself in seeing people in their brokenness,
right?
And sometimes it comes to a point where sometimes when you give somebody a scripture, it doesn't resonate with them. Right. Maybe because of their bad experience, maybe because there's something in their life that it doesn't connect. But then when you're able to speak to them in prophecy, not always quote unquote telling the future, but something that brings comfort to their heart. And that's what pierces them. Yeah. And when you can get to that point to where it pierces them, and then they understand that they're like, wow, only person that would know that would be God. That's when we see that huge heart change, because it's something that we're trying to minister to, talk to, and these different type of things. But the only time I've really seen real heart change is people when they really say, you know what, I felt God, or I heard God for the
Absolutely.
first time.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You know, and Rob, you bring something up because sometimes even in the churches I've been around, which have been predominantly more white than they have been black, but I've had a church that I was involved in heavily that was definitely more mixed cultures, but it was, I would say, more heavy white than minority or certainly black, but I don't know the percentage, but you could call it 30 or 40% maybe minority and 60% white, but I'm just guessing. Nonetheless, though, when instead of saying prophetic, what we would say is that you'd have people sit in the congregation, but there was always that time that the pastor or the person speaking there on stage was saying something. That person goes, "It felt like you were just speaking to me."
To me, yep.
Right. And so that's really a lot of the prophecy and the prophetic that you're kind of talking about is the idea that God had something that was specifically for that person. And so I think that all of us in any race can relate to the idea that you've been sitting there and going like, oh my word, you couldn't have said something that wasn't more poignant to me.
Right.
And so that really breaks it out. Tell me a little bit about your makeup of your church. Like what's the makeup there? And then the other thing I want to hit on a little bit, because this is always a little bit of a controversy in churches in general. I don't know if it's the same way in black churches as it is in, more white or even mixed churches or whatnot. And I don't know, your church may have a lot of mixed race involved in it. I think I've seen some people of different color. I don't know you guys speak to everybody. But the one is your wife speaks. She's great, by the way. I've listened to her messages.
She
and
is.
Listen, I'm not going to tell you she's better than you, but she's really, really good.
Okay.
She's really good. You're good too, brother. You good too, brother. I listen to you both, but she's really good too. And she speaks some great stuff that I've been blessed to hear. And so she's but your wife speaks, and so this can be a controversy, I think, in churches in general. But it can be I don't know if it's as controversial in the black community as it is in the white community, but for some reason we get these staunch kind of thoughts that like women can be teachers, like in Sunday
they can't
school.
Be pastors,
They can't be pastors. And which I don't adhere to that model at all. And I've got this, we're not going to try to go off on a tangent here on all the scriptures that I could show you that I think that's okay. But so I'm just letting you know, I agree with what y'all are doing. I'm in agreement, but that is a controversy. So speak a little bit about the community of church you have, and then maybe a little bit about her, the being led to have this husband and wife sort of symbiotic relationship in your church.
Yeah, no doubt. So me and we pastor a church. We're at a good number. We're at a good 50 or 60 number. That number totally was something that that's a totally different story, but we're at a good 50, 60 number. And we are mixed. We have we're not 50-50, but we're probably like, I would say 90-10.
Okay.
We do have some white people, musicians singing on the praise team,
awesome,
and some that come every now and then. And so one of the things that I was always challenged with is that, and I was always told that black people don't have a problem having a white pastor, but white people have a problem having a black pastor. And so that's something that I'm honestly, I'm not really seeing with the people that we have. Because I mean, the white people we have, I mean, they're great. I just don't see it. One of my closest friends is in ministry as well, and he lived in China for like 7 years, and I talked to him about the same thing. And he came to our church and he brought his family members. He was like, dude, I just don't see. But that's something that's heard, and that's something that I can't say that it's not true. It's just not true for us.
Sure.
I tend to not be in a place where we have a specific genre, because we all understand that Christian music, or what you say CCM, is more so along white, and then gospel music obviously is considered black. But we kind of like have this mesh, and in this mesh that we have, I mean, I'm the type of person that if the words mean something, man, let's sing it.
Oh
I don't.
man, I'm with you.
I'm not paying
I'm
attention to
with
who
you.
sings it, how it sings it, because I've heard songs pierce my heart, and I don't care who is singing it. If I know that person or whoever wrote it, that's like God putting it on their heart, and at some point in my life it's touching me.
Yeah.
Then man, let's go ahead and sing it. Like I just don't, I don't. And I think because of that, we're just more open, and we're just kind of like, man, whoever you are, come along. But it's the same way with the type of people that come to our church too.
Yep.
You'll see people that are tatted up. You'll see people that, still might drink, still might smoke,
Sure.
and those different things, hit strip clubs and all of that. But the thing is, because number one, that's what we're supposed to be ministering to anyway, right? Like,
Yeah.
what's the point of going in
Yeah.
there and all of us are the same, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But when we start seeing, you know what? I stopped smoking. I
Mm-hmm.
stopped drinking. I stopped going to the strip clubs. And not because we're preaching anything condemning, but we're preaching the grace of God.
Oh,
And
sure.
God is changing their heart. And when God is changing their heart, we're just like, man, we're just so thankful that God is using us. And so we're getting all kinds of people in. So it's really not specific to race. Now, as far as my wife is concerned, I've gotten people tell me that my wife shouldn't pastor with me.
Mm-hmm.
I've gotten people say, yeah, my wife should, sit down. That is definitely heavily prevalent in the Black church, especially in the denominational one.
Okay. So it's the same in the white church.
One.
You'd find that in the white church as well too.
Okay. Yeah. But the thing is, I mean, I don't pull out a whole bunch of scripture. I'm just like, hey man, listen, if she got a word, and
let her do
it. God gave her a word, then who am I to stop it?
I will tell you that our population has a vast majority of women in our population, and that have an entirely different outlook on life and dealing with stuff. And that is such a virtue to hear what they have to say and how they can say it. So, I mean, to me, it's depriving the body of Christ from, almost virtually half of its population, depriving the body of Christ from hearing from a unique perspective that as a man we cannot get. And so it's to me it's a travesty. So I'm all for it. And again, I've had some of this debate before, and so I hate that it's involved in that. You made some thought process about music and things of that nature. I had gone into, before I did a lot of stuff in ministry, we had a family-owned business and sold it, and we were in the Henry County area. We actually covered the whole Southern Crescent. We were like Henry, Clayton, Fayette, Coweta, and South Fulton.
Okay.
We had a sanitation business, and so we did it for 25 years. It's called CLM Sanitation, and so we sold it.
Yeah,
and so it's been around.
Around the neighborhood.
They can paint them canary yellow for all I care at this point. But we very, very grateful and blessed. And I tell people my whole story was I was playing golf 5-6 days a week, and Jesus broke my golf game. So I was like, this whole world wasn't just about me. But so through that, doing that, I had a really good friend who's the mayor of Fairburn now, and we had the contract for that city back before we sold the business, and I was doing some Bible Sunday school stuff at church. I wasn't obviously nearly as involved in ministry as I was, and he invited me to his ordination service, and he was getting ordained in I guess it was kind of like a satellite that may have been broken off from Eddie Long's group. Down in Henry County, I can't remember the name of it. Massive church. They built a beautiful building down there.
I know who you're talking about. Andre Landers is the pastor, right?
Landers. That's exactly right. And so I had never been to a church that was predominantly Black, but my friend asked me if I'd show up to his service. And I can remember how organized the service was in comparative to a white church where, we do have greeters, and I've seen that process, but they parked cars like we were going to a Braves game. I mean, they had cars parked where, so everybody, instead of you having cars facing each other, they're all parked like on the way out sort of deal.
Yeah.
And man, people in purple shirts, so everybody had a uniform. They even had white gloves, some of these people.
Yeah.
Like really a lot of kind of what I would call pomp and circumstance, but it was really an organization thing. So it was just weird. And when I walked in, they said, well, you know, and I'm sure I probably stuck out like a little sore thumb, but I'm telling you, these people were the kindest people I ever met. They said, "Who are you here for?" I told them I was here for my friend Vince, and they then took me to where I sat to do it. And the service had some differences. You were talking about song differences. There were songs I recognized, but then they had a little bit of a twist to them. And there was some dance in it, and there were some different things going on, and it was not something I was necessarily used to, but it didn't. It certainly affected me, and it was totally different, but totally relatable at the same time.
Right.
And then when the pastor got up to speak, it was, I mean, he killed it. It was unbelievable. It was one of the better services I'd heard in a long time. So, you know, we get these impressions of, you know, whatever church is going to be like, and in different cultures. And so certainly the worship and some of the culture was a little bit different, but I mean, heck, it probably, I mean, that makes some sense. We're all different. We all, I don't like the same music as all of my white friends, you know, and I like country and I like rap. I like, you know, I like different stuff.
Exactly.
So how you want to receive Jesus is got to be different, you know, and it's interesting because you I don't know, you may agree with this. There was a time in my life I finally figured out that if Jesus is really going to be a friend of mine, why does he have to look like everybody else's friendship?
Right.
You know,
exactly.
I can relate to Jesus. I can relate to Jesus different than you relate to Jesus, and that's okay. Because my friendship with people is going to be different than your friendship and how you relate to them itself as well.
Exactly.
So, right.
Man,
so that relationship is really powerful. But you know, moving on a little bit from this, you know, you kind of came up, you know, there's some differences in the Black church that I thought I want to talk a little bit about, just because you know, there's a lot of this skepticism. You know, again, years ago, I did a workout deal, and I had people who come to my house, and I had a lot of pastors who come to my house. Some of them were pastors that I kind of worked with inside of the church I was involved with. And then one of them was a pastor from another church. I don't like saying names when I do this, but I will say it was Turning Point Church in Henry County. And that pastor would come in and work out with me, and great, just awesome guy. We just happened to be neighbors one time, so we knew each other. And he said, "Hey, can I come work out with you too?" So we were working out. Long story short, I had different music going on, and I tended to pick things that were positive music. So it could be some fast-paced Christian, it could be some stuff, but I try to not have, you know, really kind of negative words or explicit lyrics. But I brought in things like Lecrae. I brought in a lot of the 116 crew, stuff like that, that I brought into. And, you know, man, I love working out to that thing. You know, it's as a beat and whatnot. But there was a song that was like right at the end of the workout when we're both exhausted and we're kind of laying on there, where I don't hear any words after like 2 minutes into a workout. Like I just tune it out. I'm just trying to breathe, and I'm trying to keep my heart rate right. I just don't want to die, you know. But at the very end, I'll hear it. And this particular rapper was really going hard in on like this idea of prosperity gospel. Joel Osteen, he was going in. I think he used Creflo Dollar in it. He used Eddie Long was used in it. You know, different of this. You know, the people that everybody throws at as they get thrown out. And I'll never forget, and this was a white pastor, and he's a friend of mine, but he has a very healthy outlook and I think relationship with some of these pastors. And I'll never forget, because it was weird. And he said, "Did you hear all those lyrics?" I said, "Yeah, I mean, this is what I know. You know, is what I know of these people, is what these kind of people say, or what's in the news." And he said, he looked at me, and all he said was, "What if you're wrong?"
Yeah.
And I thought that was probably the most powerful thing I've ever heard. He didn't go in hard on me. He didn't hit me with it. It just made me think. He's like, what if you're wrong? What if you're wrong? What if what these guys are about are so much deeper than what you're trying to say? You know, and so you pick up on that, and I know you kind of, it seems like you came out of some of that world, and maybe you can shed some light to that, and kind of you're dealing with it. Which, by the way, I think Creflo has like an amazing gospel message on grace. It's really great. So if you really listen to what he's got to say, I mean, it's a little different what the news and the media posts all the time.
Yeah, and you know, that is the church that we came out of. Me and my wife, we were ordained out of World Changers in 2015, June 2015. Awesome. I had been a member of his church, World Changers, since 2006, I believe, 2007, something like that.
Oh, wow.
I had been basically a student of his teaching ever since like the late 90s.
Yep.
And so with that, hold on, excuse me.
Oh, you're good.
Yes, my
mom watched Frozen.
Okay, you can watch Frozen. Go ahead and tell mommy, okay?
That's awesome. That's like on repeat. Man, my kids were little, that was on repeat. So I remember Frozen. That's so cute.
Man, yeah. That's my sweetheart. So came out of World Changers around 2000. I had been following him since the late 90s. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that I'm very observant. I've never been a fan of the news, because I find that because of in my understanding of tone and inflection and those type of things, you can change a narrative easily by adding something like, aren't I right? Or, you know, you can add different things, or you can kind of raise an eyebrow, and you can literally change someone's understanding or thought. And you can change a narrative. So people were saying a lot of stuff about Creflo, and I was like, I just don't, you know, I understand. I see a lot of this stuff, a lot of people, but I don't know, because every time I sit down and watch him, man, it's just some, you know, some good word.
I agree. He goes, I mean, you know, I haven't followed Creflo nearly as long as you, and so you know, you get these different messages, but if you actually dive in, or you can get mixed messages through the media, but if you dive into some of his messages, I mean, he's got I mean, you know, he's got a pretty good understanding of grace if you actually dive in and listen to what he's talking about, and this desire to follow Jesus. You may not like his delivery method, but that's just style. But
right,
you know, but his message of grace is pretty spot on in a lot of cases, for sure.
Excuse me, one more time.
You're good.
I think my wife is putting my youngest to sleep, so
that's great. No, that's great. That's great. You know, I can remember, and I may have told you this story. We may have conversed about it. I can't remember, but I remember a moment in time when I was in Atlanta doing church, and my son played on a soccer team, and there was a parent and his wife, Patty was the dad's name, so he's Irish. I mean, and he was from Ireland, so he had the accent and everything. Over here for a job. I don't think he was an American citizen. I think he was here on a work visa and whatnot. But again, great family, lived just down the street from us, and he was throwing the St. Patty's Day party at his house. And so he said, would you guys come? And man, anytime you're willing to invite a pastor to a party, I love it. I'm like, man, that's great, because nobody ever wants to invite me to party.
Exactly.
So I came to party and hung out, and you know, and I don't mind as far as a pastor, I'll have a drink with you. So I don't mind having a beer. I'm not one that will go, you know, crazy when especially when I've got my pastor hat on and all this other stuff.
Right,
so
right.
I'm not out doing stuff, but nonetheless, I was sitting there and trying to meet people and talking. And Patty, though, loved to come up and tell everybody that Patty would love to come up and tell everybody that, hey, this is my buddy who's a pastor. So he just, throughout the party, it was like I was having this great conversation as who he say, oh, Jason, yeah, he's a pastor. And that was like everybody would move. Like nobody was around me. I was like, you're killing my vibe, dude. Don't tell everybody I'm a pastor. But, you know, so my wife was just hanging out there, my wife and I hanging out. And finally, I guess he said that to someone. And the guy looks at me. And this was right around the time that the news hit with Creflo getting a plane or whatever. And
Oh, yeah.
he asked for people and money and all this other stuff. And so he said, so when are you getting your jet? And of course I said, listen, you know, which I knew he was just kind of diving in on the Christian culture.
Yeah.
And I said, look, I can't speak to the jet stuff. I don't know about that. I'm not in his church. I'm not going to cast stones. I don't know what's going on there. So I can't speak. He goes, oh, I'm just kidding. And he walked away. You know, conversation was Immediately this lady overheard that conversation and she said, you're a pastor? And I said, I am. And she says, well, I've got a 13-year-old girl that has given up on her faith. How do I handle that? So we had this long conversation about things she could do and parenting and being involved in the church and diving in harder and doing all this stuff. And so to me, that's what it's about, is conversations. And so even where whatever Creflo did there and that, I'm sure there's a whole backstory to what went down in that situation, but it's not nearly what the news media blew up about it. But even when they try to use it for bad, God uses it for good.
Still uses it for good, man.
Story. He still uses it for good. Because I'm like, God bless Creflo, because it put the name of Jesus in the papers.
Amen.
Yeah.
You know, that is something, because, you know, we definitely, you could have talked about it. You could have been in a place where you could have joined in, you could have been saying something negative, and you know, it could have been an adverse effect, you know, for her.
Yeah.
But you know, so that is amazing. Our experience though at World Changers is Dr. Dollar's probably one of the most down to earth people that I know.
Yep.
One of the most spiritual people that I know. The man studies his word probably more than any other pastor that I know, period. He's always in the word. So, you know, we hear different things. The whole jet fiasco, how that happened, I'll speak a little bit to it.
Sure.
So for those that don't know, you know, he has had a plane for several years. And his plane, the opportunities that he has to speak are all across the world. You know, as many times as this man is on the road, speaking as many as 300 nights a year, Delta does not fly that schedule. And so, especially when you're looking at international, as much as the international speaking that he does, you can't just hop a plane and say, hey, I'm just going over here, because if you miss one flight, and you might miss the next 2 or 3 speaking engagements just because you missed this one flight. So that's the reason why a lot of these ministers have planes, because they're going from East Coast to West Coast, all over, you know, different continents and whatnot. But the reason why the jet story came out is because his wife, Pastor Taffy, and his daughters were actually on a plane leaving England, I think they were in London, and the plane ran off the track and it broke in two.
Oh, wow.
Fuel from the fuselage was leaking into the plane, and they had to literally escape out of this plane because they didn't know if it was going to blow up or not. Now, it did not blow up, but I've seen pictures, and literally the plane snapped in two. Oh, no. So what ended up happening was, before that was actually the third occurrence. I'm sorry. The first occurrence, he was on his way to Australia. I think he was on his way to Hillsong or Planet Shakers. And one of the engines blew out over the Pacific Ocean. Landed, got it fixed. He was there for a couple of weeks doing speaking engagements, got it fixed. On the way back, the other engine blows out. Then the plane, you know, crashes. So we're in this place where he's not saying, hey, I need a new plane, but other people, partners of the ministry, were saying, hey, we need you to come back out. We need you to come back out. And so doing the international flight thing really wasn't working. And so it was actually the partners who actually said, hey, we'll pay for your plane for you. It wasn't anything like, he didn't go to the congregation and say, hey, y'all need to help me buy this jet like people say. He didn't create a GoFundMe like some people say. None of that happened. It was partners that say, hey, we want to donate to you to get another jet so you can continue in ministry. That's all it was.
Right.
And then it turned into all this different stuff. And, you know, it was definitely crazy because I would travel. I never traveled with him on the plane, but I would travel to different cities around the country. And when that happened, it was pretty interesting. You know, there were times where you could tell that he was concerned because it's not his heart. His heart is spreading the word of God.
And I'm sure that's got to be a difficult position for anyone that gets to a point of power in ministry. Is how do I? Because you know, as a minister, you have this kind of humbleness inside of you, and this idea to serve, the idea to listen, the idea to teach, the idea to be there, all these things, and so there's this idea, you know, people are pulling from you, and I can see that happening where you may need, you know, some help. Technical difficulties.
Everything seems to be falling down.
That's right. But you know, I can see that happening where you get pulled in so many different ways that you can't make it there. And I know some of these speaking engagements are paid. They're maybe even outside his ministry at the church, and not even place a burden on the church. So I'm sure, you know, I know that's a big thing that preachers and sneakers is a big Instagram that. And so some of it I get, you know, this idea of like, you know, why are we wearing $1,000 shoes and whatnot? Right. So I understand the idea of where it goes. And it's this weird, I think we need to have those discussions. So I'm not begrudging to those discussions on how can we help people and how can we do more. I tend to think that there's a good number of people that have a really good heart. You know, sometimes they don't talk about what World Changers does in the communities that it's there. You know, we did a lot of business in that Forest Park and that East Point and gosh, all the way up into South Fulton. But, you know, just that entire area, Union City. I mean, all those areas. Yeah. We did a lot of business in there, and World Changers had a major impact in the business community, major impact in the streets and some of the cleanliness in community, major impact in crime control. But I mean, it goes deeper into even what I knew. I mean, they were really influential. And so, and not just in how they deal with people, but in their monies. You know, I mean, they really put forth, quite frankly, one of the biggest, charitable, businesses, if not the biggest charitable business in Clayton County, you know, and certainly North Clayton County. Yeah. You know, I don't know that there's even anybody that would come close to what they did. And
I've been there. And a lot of times people think, oh, those are just, you know, government funds that they're using. No, when I tell you they're not. Right. This is one of the things where the monies is actually coming from the church. Sure. One of the biggest things that we did when I was there, and I still work there, by the way. I work in the IT department.
Oh, awesome.
One of the biggest things that we did there was we bought 3 truckloads of food and distributed it in the communities for no special notoriety.
No event. Nothing.
Yeah, it was just something to do, something to help. And one of the things that I think Pastor Dollar is understanding now is that if you don't tell your story, someone else will.
Yeah.
He's one of the people that won't tell you the things that he's done for individuals, for groups. I know people he's bought cars for. I know people he's bought homes for.
Sure.
I know, like I said, the 3 18-wheelers full of food. I know even during Katrina, I think he bought out 3 hotels and sent buses down to Louisiana, bought out the entire hotel for people to come. These are the things that we probably won't hear him speak about. And there's tons of other things that we'll probably never know. But, you know, I think he's understanding now you do have to share something or else people are just going to say, you're just stealing money from the members. You know,
Yeah.
they got millionaires, several millionaires, a part of the ministry that started out homeless.
So they're elevating, aside from the help, they're elevating families too, though.
Right.
Inside that ministry, they're families that are going from, you know, like you said, homelessness to millionaire status.
Yeah.
But even forget the millionaires. I mean, how many countless families that they've repaired marriages for and help people buy homes and, you know, just better dads, better mothers, you know, I mean, those things. And that's where this conversation happens, because we can read the headlines.
Right.
Or we can decide to have a heart talk, you know?
Right. Just like with the Pastor Challenge, you said, what if you're wrong?
That's right.
I know.
That's right.
You know, and I've heard the songs, and it's hurtful to me because you're talking about somebody I know.
Sure.
And
sure.
It's something that where, you know, I at times I used to get like really offended by it, but you know, if someone doesn't know, you know, it's just kind of like, man, they just, you know, they're buying into the propaganda, they're buying into, you know, what they heard, but you know, at the end of the day, like, that doesn't matter. You know what happens. And then even here's the thing that we have to understand though. Say something did come out and say he did do something wrong. Does that negate all of the good that he's done?
In no way. In no way. That's a great question. You're right. Like we've expected these pastors to be placed on a pedestal that they can't have some sort of effect, but God uses imperfect people to do incredible things. But that's the story of the Bible. I mean, that's as old as Abraham. That's as old as you know, Moses. That's as old as David. I mean, yes, imperfect people throughout that God's used. You know, there's a ton of old stories in the Old Testament we could go through that would just, you're like, wait, he married the son's wife that was a prostitute. Yep. I mean, it's like, what? You know, and so you have these crazy stories, and those are in the lineage of Jesus and quoted as being in the lineage of Jesus in Matthew.
In the lineage of Jesus. Yeah.
So you're right. But we hold people up to a standard that's, you know, they're imperfect, and pastors are imperfect. They don't always make the right decisions. And certainly I think there's pastors that may be out there for unscrupulous reasons. I mean, Christian faith has problems in it. We need to, we're like any other industry, if you call it an industry, other group that's got a lot of problems in it. Hey, let me move on from a little bit from this, but by the way, I really appreciate you talking openly about it, because I know that's sometimes a difference between sometimes churches and, you know, especially in the white culture, you hear these headlines and you don't know what's going on behind the scenes, and you don't realize how interwoven the Black church can be into their community, and what a refuge that it becomes to the community. Yeah. And so it's like you said, Creflo in that particular church, and there's other Black churches that have just really put their hands all over people, and all over your church and the goodness you're doing in your church, you and your wife. But let's move on a little bit from there. You know, I know that I wanted to kind of jump in a little bit with some of the racial divide that we've seen going on in the world today. I know you are certainly as a Black man, a Black father, a Black husband, and a Black pastor. I know I've seen many of the posts you do that have grace, humility, and certainly justice woven into your posts. You know, and I know you saw some of my first few talks, or at least my first talk, and from that, you know, I talked to some of these guys, and everybody I've talked to, they talked about, you know, really this idea that they knew what racism was before they knew what the world was. Yeah. You almost this idea that they realized that they were different, and it, like I didn't grow up going, I'm different. I grew up that you were different. Yeah. You know what I mean? But they knew that they were different. Right. From, again, that I can remember one of my young guys, and I say they're young, they're not that young anymore, but one of the guys I really mentored and really part of that kind of youth group that I was kind of chaperoning through their youth. I remember him saying that he had to always go back and ask his mom and dad, you know, what do these terms mean? What does this N-word mean? What is, this thing mean? I mean, can you speak to that a little bit? I mean, do you kind of relate to that? Do you remember that sort of thing growing up?
Yeah, actually, when I was a lot younger, before we moved to Atlanta, I was born in Atlanta. We moved to New Jersey and then came back. And when we moved to New Jersey, it was majority white. I was the only Black kid in most of my classes. So definitely, when you're younger, you don't really, you're kind of oblivious to a lot of the different things. Amongst the kids, you know, everything is taught. So much the kids, it wasn't as bad. It was actually from the teachers that I would get comments, or that they would say certain things, and I would have to come home and talk to my mom about it. And so from there, it was one of the things that, like you said, like I knew I was different, and I knew that I was treated differently than other kids, but I didn't know why. Like, I just see, I'm in second grade, there's a bunch of other second graders, why are you making me do certain things or talking to me a certain way, but you're not talking to anybody else a certain way? It's one of those things where, you know something's different, but you don't really know what it is. And being that we were in the North, I don't think it was as prevalent.
Sure.
But when we came back down South, and we actually moved back down South to a majority Black neighborhood, and at the time when we were in DeKalb County, one of the most, I guess you'd say, richest Black counties in the United States. I think it was number 1 or number 2 behind Prince George's County in Maryland. So I didn't see a lot of it.
Yeah.
What ended up happening though is when I moved outside of that, when I moved out to Conyers, and then moved down here on the South Side, then that's where I started really experiencing a lot of racial tension, a lot of looks, a lot of clutched purses, a lot of locked doors, and it's one of those things where it just kind of becomes normal to you, like. You already know the person she's gonna clutch her purse. You already know.
You see it happening before you see it happens.
Yeah, you already know. So I personally, like, especially if I'm with my wife and my family, I kind of make my way around or outside. And that's the thing. It's like, a lot of people say, well, you don't have to deal with that person. You could just go around, but why should I have to do that?
Yeah.
Why should I have to change the way that I'm living, the way that I'm speaking to my family, the way that I'm doing things because somebody else is uncomfortable, especially when it happens over and over and over again. There have been times where I've refused to get on an elevator with a white woman because of the way she looked when you see me standing there. Now, I'm not a big, huge Black guy, but I'm kind of, on the healthy side. And
it's like you don't
when
even want to get accused or something happening or whatever.
Man, I know people it's happened to.
Yeah.
My cousin actually did jail time for a supposed rape. And he did 8 years for something that she came out and said it wasn't true. I've experienced.
She came out later and said it wasn't true.
Yeah. And they didn't do anything. He had to spend the rest of his years.
Yeah, I'm a big supporter in the Equal Justice Initiative. I really believe in what they do. I mean, there's you bring an interesting thing, is maybe it's a segue into the legal system, because I tend to think that, or I want to believe, the system we have is better than systems in other countries. I want to believe that. And I think it may be, but at least I want to believe that. But there is a disparagement in the percentages of colored people and Black people of color. So you can kind of lump in. I mean, we can focus just on Black folks, but we can focus on just minorities in general too.
Right.
That really get arrested far more times. I mean, I think to just cannabis and marijuana. I think I saw that the average use in marijuana is the same for Blacks and whites, but Blacks are 4 times more likely to get arrested for marijuana than whites.
Yeah. I have
So
a cousin that was arrested for marijuana. You know?
Which I think that those laws are changing, fortunately, in the country, and I think that that's a good benefit, especially for minorities. But the crazy thing is, and I know I've got white friends will say, but our numbers are higher. But I'm like, but if you look at totality and population, it's ridiculous. Yeah. It's ridiculous when you look at the amount of it's really disparaging, and the number of black people based on population is vastly disproportionate to people of whites. And the Equal Justice Initiative has done such an incredible job in trying to root out, but they're understaffed, underpaid, and the job's well too hard because the system is really, in large part, I don't know. Would you agree that I think that maybe black communities are policed more or stop more? I mean, every black person that I've talked with has seemed to have some sort of run-in with police. And I don't want to say every, because there certainly are people that don't, and that haven't. So that happens. So that's not every, but the large portion, I should say, have had some sort of run-in.
I can say that of every, because I even did a segment with the some of the black men in our church, and I can honestly tell you, Jason, every black man that I know has had some type of run-in, including myself, where you get a check and you realize, okay, you're going too far. I remember probably about 5 years ago, me and a friend of mine decided we wanted to go to Waffle House one night, and we were in the Peachtree City area, and I had 8 police cars pull us over. 8. For no reason. You know what the reason was? He said that my insurance had expired when I had changed insurance companies. For insurance.
But you're welcome to, but one police officer pulling you over for expired insurance, that would be fine, but 8.
And he was, when I was talking to him and he asked me, when I get pulled over, I don't wait for you to ask me to get my wallet or anything like that. My wallet is already out. My ID is on the dashboard.
So
my hands are already on
were
the
you
steering.
given that talk? Were you given that talk as a young age?
Yeah.
Or is that something you just learned? Because that talk I've heard is common talk, is that, every black man and every black woman from their parents, or someone in authority says, here's like the 10 rules, or here's the 15 rules, or whatever it is, to when you pulled over, this is how it needs to be. I even had one of my guys say, like, his parents told him he had to call his parents and put them on speakerphone on the dash.
Yeah.
So if they could at least hear it and just plead with the officer to not pull their gun. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So that's the thing about this story. So I turned to get my ID and I looked to my right, and his partner had his gun drawn to me in who I was riding with for insurance. And I gave my ID, and that's not the first time. I've had a gun pulled on me at least 3 times. One for a blown tail light, one for insurance, and one I was riding in a car with several other guys. I was in the back seat.
So we're saying that you didn't have someone pull a gun on you that was, a citizen, or some kind of knucklehead pulling a gun. You're saying that a person with a badge.
Yeah, the guys with the badge.
Protect and serve.
You want to know, that's extremely traumatic.
Yeah, sure.
To be staring down the barrel of a gun and then for you to just go on about your business. You had my life in your hands.
Go eat at Waffle House. Go enjoy your Waffle House dinner now, right?
Yeah. It was one of the things, it messes up your whole night. It messes up your whole mood. It's something that's traumatic. And so whenever a police car gets behind me now, I know I'm not doing wrong. I know I'm not speeding. I know my insurance is good. I know all of these different things.
But your heart,
my heart is still going to race.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's a build-up thing, right? So that's a thing that, if it happens to you once, it's one thing. It happens to you again, it's another thing. It happens to you again. And then if you topple that with the stories from your parents and the stories from their parents, there's a build-up thing that makes some of this unrest. Maybe you try to understand, why are people so upset? Why are these protests happening? Why are some of these things happening? Even sometimes, why are these riots happening? Not that I don't think you're for looting and rioting, and most people I talk to aren't for it. But again, having a conversation, try to understand it, is part of these discussions. But I mean, certainly peaceful protests. I think we can all be for peaceful protests, but I understand what's happening, and I know sometimes people are like, well, why, if that person just understood that they didn't need to resist. And it's like, but you've never been arrested 20 times for no reason.
Right.
Or you've never been arrested 3 or 4 times for no reason. You never had to go through that. I mean, there's a time that you just get so frustrated with it. It's like when I call the cable company, which is trivializing what you're going through. But I've called the cable company. We've all called them so long that now, I mean, I just get in a bad mood knowing I've got to call them.
Right.
Because it sucks. But and I know I trivialized this, so I don't mean to trivialize.
But no, but
what you're saying. But I'm just saying, if you can relate to that, just to relate to the idea, though, that you go through that situation so many times. You're like, now here I am dealing with it again. You're pissed off. You're upset. You get frustrated. It's not right, And so it's easy to understand. And by the way, Rob, I think you'd also agree that there's a number of police officers. We're not talking about probably the vast majority of police officers, but there's probably a number of really good police officers out there. And we know that. We know that there's good, I know police officers that absolutely, of all colors, that do a good job and genuinely are wanting to protect and serve and do well. But there's a problem. There's a problem. And I've said this before, again, I don't want to compare different abuses, but I know I've got great friends that are Catholics. I know Catholic priests. I was married by a Catholic priest, and they're great people and great priests. And not all priests are bad. Not all Catholic people are bad, but there was certainly a problem with priests abusing children. And there was certainly a problem with that cover up in that system, and that needed to be corrected. And there's certainly a problem with police. So again, not all police are bad. Not all precincts are bad. Not everyone involved in that's good. There's a lot of good done in that. And I say this because I know people will view this. I just want them to know that our heart isn't that we think everybody's bad, but there's a problem. And just because there's a problem doesn't mean you throw out the whole orchard, but there's a problem and we need to address it.
Yeah. And one of the biggest things that I feel it needs to be addressed, not by me, not by necessarily you, but if you're an officer and there's an officer doing wrong, it is your duty. It's your duty to report, to pull them back. It's not this code of silence or something like that.
Right, and that goes deep into the systematic issues, right?
Exactly.
If there's kind of protect the brother. You've also got kind of heavy-handed unions. I mean, I was reading something the other day, talked about how that a lot of precincts want to get rid of bad cops, want to move out the troublemakers and the ones that have some racist issues and things like that. But that the tribunals to get them fired, that it's only like 40% of the people they can fire can even be fired.
Wow. Because
of some of the unions that they have and the backstops that are built into the system.
Right.
Which, I'm all for plenty of that, but and people having protection in their jobs, and I'm for supporting people in their jobs. I'm for all that stuff, but and I agree with you. I don't know all the things that need to be there, but we need to have those discussions. And so I think that's a lot of what this protest is. We need to have those discussions. We need to talk. How do we empower the good police officers to be able to lead?
Yeah, I think I think one of the things is definitely letting the good police officers know that we support them, because and there's gonna have to be some level of, and I get it. You didn't sign up to be a social justice, person, signing up for the police force, but at the end of the day, that's what it's gonna take. I posted something probably about 2 or 3 months ago, and I said that, and I said, dear white people, we need your help.
That's right.
Because I can say, Jason, I can tell you all day long that I'm going to get pulled over or that I've been pulled over and all these different things. But until you see it for yourself, that's the thing about the George Floyd video.
Yep.
That brought a lot of it to a forefront, because a lot of white people did not know that this happens.
Yep.
In 2020. This happens for 8 minutes and 46 seconds.
Right.
There was a knee on the back of this guy. Now, it does not matter what he did or what he didn't do.
No,
it does not matter what he could have done a month prior or anything like that.
I agree.
The fact that you feel like somebody should have been empowered enough to allow somebody to take their last breath, that's wrong.
No, it's totally wrong.
And that's where we need help.
He was totally handled. There's 4 of them around there. There's no need to bring him to the ground. No need to put his knee on the neck, and no need to hold it there for 8 minutes and 36 seconds. And so I couldn't agree with you more. And that's been said to me, by the way, Rob, by several, almost in every video, is this idea. The first video I can remember one of the guys saying to me towards the end of the video, saying that my voice was almost more important than their voice. Mm-hmm. And that really struck me as, okay, I've got to do more. I think Andy Stanley said it best, saying that it's not good enough to be non-racist. You know, in other words, right. I'm not against child abuse, but I'm more than that. I'm anti-child abuse. And if I see a kid getting beaten or hurt or whatever, I'm going to go over on the side of the street and I'm going to say, hey, this isn't okay, right? But I can't be – it's not okay for me to be a non-racist. I got to be anti-racist. So when I see it, I've got to address it and say that that's not okay. And there's a way to address it. There's a way as a Christian I can address it. And there's, you know, without trying to escalate it and do it as best I can. But I've got to address it. And sometimes it calls for a louder voice. Sometimes it can be a softer voice. But that was said to me in that one. And then I think my buddy Mario said it last time, saying that in every step of the way during slavery and Underground Railroad and the right to vote and civil rights era and all that white people had to be involved. Yep. They had to be involved. They had to raise their voice. They had to stand beside us. And it's a really good point that now we're seeing this more. I've been proud to see more people, white, stand with blacks and black brothers and sisters. I've been really proud to see that. It's something that I like. You know, it's interesting though that I've got others that, you know, my feed is really diverse. so which made me want to do some of these talks, and I've lost some folks that don't watch my stuff anymore, and that's okay. That's okay. But you know, my feed tends to be more diverse, but you're right. It's going to take that voice standing up and saying it's not okay, and having these conversations with our friends saying it's not okay.
There's so much. There's so much that can be said, and I know it all can't be said in one sitting. But there's so much, you know, because everything that it feels like, whenever, as a black person, as a community, as a culture, we try to move forward in certain ways, things always seem to get hijacked.
So that was my next question I was going to ask you. It's kind of like where we are now, where this began, and are you worried about it kind of dying out?
Yeah, I am. I'm worried about it dying out because narrative. People paint narratives, and so it's easy for you to kind of turn a deaf ear because, you know, if I say Black Lives Matter, automatically you assume that I'm associating myself with the group,
particular organization or whatever. Yeah.
Right. When you know what I'm saying? There's so many black people that are just like, no, nobody cares about that. But we see that they're trying to bring light to a situation. So, you know, you welcome their help, but the idea behind saying Black Lives Matter then all of a sudden everybody's like, well, that's a Marxist group.
They park it you into this Marxist or fashion, whatever they're trying to do, or you're part of Antifa now or whatever it is, and this crazy conspiracy thing going on. You're just like, no, I'm really literally trying to say that Black Lives Matter. That's literally what I'm trying to say.
That's right. And I mean, and we
Which,
know
by
that
the way,
all
you're not
lives
trying
matter.
to say, you're not trying to say Black lives are more important than everyone else. You're saying we just want to matter. We just
Right.
want to matter. Like we just want to matter. You're not even saying we want more rights or less rights. You just want to matter. That's
We
it.
just want to matter. And that's the thing, like you tend to like, so if I say things like Black Power, automatically people would think, oh, it's just like KKK and white power. No, it's not.
No.
It's like you say, it's bring yourself up to matter, to be equal, to understand that it's okay to be unapologetically Black, just like you're unapologetically white. It's cool. We're different. It's cool.
Sure. That's
but,
right. Yeah.
But for me to have to say, like, my life means something, for me to have to try to get that through your head.
You're already at disadvantage. You're at a disadvantage just having to get that through out there, right? You're at a disadvantage by the fact that you have to have a phrase saying my life matters, or my children's life matters, or my wife's life matters. You're at a disadvantage because I'm not running around telling everybody that my life matters.
Right.
I didn't have to come up with a slogan, a protest, none of that stuff. I didn't have to have anybody fight for the fact that you can't fire me because of my color.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. It's so much. And it's like, and all we're just trying to do is just make people aware and understand that we're equal. That's all it is. It's, you know, you hear about that, and then, you know, it's always an underlying thing. And then there's this guy, I have
hijacked for sure.
diverse timeline. And there's this guy I just had to totally separate myself from, because he was trying to break it down to say that Black people were more, quote unquote, savage than white people because of
my word.
he was saying because of the quote unquote black crime and all these different things. And I'm like, dude, like it got so to the point where I just said, I just can't even, because I really wanted to have a conversation with him, but it was everything that he was saying out of ignorance.
Yeah, sometimes you can't get through to everybody right then, right? So you drop your nuggets and have to go and hope that something sinks in, right?
Yeah, it was one of those things where, like for example, Jason, and I'm gonna kind of give a briefer understanding but when we talk about things like Black murder, Black murder is normal, Black on Black crime, and things of that nature, we have to look at the way things are delivered through the media. We have to look at the people that are in control of the media, in control of the narrative. You can go on the radio right now and you can pull up a Black station and you're going to hear a lot of misogyny, a lot of, you know, shooting and killing and all these different things, but I can go to a white station and I won't hear it. It's automatically assumed that because I'm Black, this is what I want to hear and this is what my lifestyle is. And so instead of, you know, I can come with a positive rap song or something like that, but it's not going to get played because that's not necessarily what sells, right?
Yeah, it's all about advertisements. People don't realize that the news that they're seeing, whether it's conservative or liberal, whatever news station is, or radio waves. I mean, I was involved with an artist who has gone on to do touring and CCM. We wrote some songs together and did some stuff. Super proud of the guy, and he loves people like it's nobody else. But to get an artist played on the radio is an act of God. To what's controlled is all about the advertiser dollars. It's not actually about what you want to listen to. It's about what the advertisers think you'll listen to.
Right.
What's pleasing them. It has nothing to do with, and that's what's happening with the news. That's what's happening with the radio for sure.
Right. And so when we take that narrative and we feel like, oh, this is the truth because they like this type of music, and we don't have an understanding of advertising, we don't have an understanding of how all of these things going, it paints a picture. It paints a negative picture that I can say all day long, I'm not like that. But if that's all that's on the radio, if that's all that's on TV, that's what's going to program people and say, oh yeah, they are just like that, because listen to what they listen to. Look at what's going on in the reality TV shows. Look at what's going on in Chicago. But the thing is, just like you said, like all of this stuff, because it's based off of opinion, because it's based off of ad dollars, people can control a narrative. And the most frustrating thing is when you quote something that is so off base, because you're quoting something based off of what you read and not what you know. Not from my experience, not from any experience of any of your friends that you may have, or even somebody on the street. If you want to ask a Black person something, ask a Black person on the street, but please don't go to the liberal or conservative media, because it's always going to be twisted. It is,
it's extremes of everybody's viewpoints, right?
Extremes, man. And because of those extremes, the clearer picture is removed. And that's the frustrating thing. Black lives, they matter. Yeah, they matter. All lives matter. This is a Marxist group. Whatever. And the whole idea is like, no, like, listen, like, this dude just pulled a gun out on me for insurance. Like, that's okay?
It's not okay. It's not okay. And it brings us back. We said this in the beginning too, that it's this idea that we have to have conversations with each other. We can't listen to social media. We can't, because social media only points the worst of us. It only points the best of us, right? The worst of some of the ideas that you see and that people blast out on social media, but it's also sometimes just the best of your family. I've never really put anything about, my poor disciplinarian procedures on my kids, or how I never talk about that, right? It's always the great trip we had, or the wonderful plated food, or the beautiful sunset that I've also edited, and I've darkened, and I've lightened, so that even that photo I've edited, So we always put the best of those things out there, and we never. But the conversation like this is the only way I understand what you've gone through, to try to say what is going on in this world. There's meaning behind it. And it's not this narrative that the media puts out there. I mean, and some of it, I think people want to buy into it, because then that kind of lets them off the hook, right?
Right.
So if I buy into that Black Lives Matter is a Marxist group, then I don't have to believe it. None of it's true.
Right.
And if I meet the one Black person that says I've never had racism, then boom, I'm out. Right. I'm out.
Yeah, that's kind of fun.
I don't have to believe it ever happened. Right. I did my case study. It's not true, and I didn't have to have it happen. And so, I just encourage people, if you're watching this, to find people that are different from you, to find ways to worship with people that are different from you, find ways to have coffee with people that are different from you, find ways to dive into Bible study. The last group I talked to, they were interracial marriage. The wife was Black, the husband was white, and the guy's parents, he was kind of, they talked a little bit about being nervous about the parents finding out about this interracial relationship. And the two moms actually got together and started doing Bible studies together when they learned that their kids were getting married, because they wanted to understand each other.
Right.
But that's moms for you. That's good moms for you, right? That's moms for you. Diving in and saying, I want to understand the differences here, because we see a larger picture. We're going to have kids of color. We see a blend that's happening. We want to understand, how can I relate to you? How can you relate to me? Yeah. And so those are the steps that it's got to take to get through this, and it's really tough. One thing I wanted to tell you, and it popped up while you were talking, I ended up pulling it up, but and it goes to what we're doing now, because we feel like, is this going to die out? I mean, hopefully it doesn't. Hopefully we continue having these conversations. I know there's unrest going on. The one thing I know about this is, if we don't have these conversations, we will repeat this police brutality, this abuse. These things will continue to happen. They're not, and I know this because my first one, I read a list of 50-something names of people that have been killed at the hands of police, in just the last 7 or 8 years, so the list is a lot longer than Breonna Taylor and George Floyd and Ahmaud Arbery.
Oh yeah, man.
I mean, it's a lot longer list that goes out there in this. But one thing I want to say is Paul, wrote his letter to the church in Galatia. which is now modern day Turkey. You know,
right.
several thousand, not quite 2,000 years ago, but at any rate, he wrote his letter out there, and he said this in Galatians chapter 6, verse 9 and 10. He said, "So let's not get tired of doing what is good." So
Right.
let's not get tired of doing what is good. At just the right time, we will reap a harvest of blessing if we don't give up.
Yes,
I mean,
yes,
if
yes,
we
yes.
don't give up. He says,
Yeah.
therefore, whenever we have the opportunity, we should do good to everyone. And
Right.
especially to those in the family of faith, which,
Right.
you know, I know some of my friends in faith might say, well, that means that we should be really good to the people in faith. And it does. It does mean it means that you and I are brothers and sisters in Christ, and we
Right.
should be better to each other. But it
Right.
doesn't negate that it says we should do good to everyone.
Everyone.
So
Right.
even if you're outside the faith, right? Even
Right.
if you're outside the faith, we should do good.
Yeah.
But I want to encourage you, because Paul encouraged the church in Galatia. And I want to encourage you, of course, encourage me, encourage anybody watching this. I'm hoping that if you've watched any of my other ones, or if this is the first one you watched, that you'll realize that this is something that we've got to get involved in. And we keep the story going. We keep talking about it. We keep having relationships. We keep learning from each other. We keep trying to dive in deeper, because it's worth it. And that if we and like Paul said, at the right time, we will reap a harvest of blessing.
Yeah.
If we just don't give up. And so I think it's really, really, truthfully, eminently important. And I encourage you to keep doing what you're doing at the bar church there, man.
Yes, sir.
Great stuff y'all
Yes,
are
sir.
doing. You and your wife, it's some pretty amazing stuff. Before we kind of get, you know, change back a little bit to the church, you know, how do you, one of the things I want to talk about, and this is something because I know it's near and dear to your heart, and we talked a little bit about it in the beginning, but I wanted to hit you because I think you're really this champion, and I feel like, I know you didn't coin this term, but I think I first heard it from you, and I thought, man, I wish I had come up with that because it was so good. But I remember you said it was a church hurt. You know, you use this term church hurt a lot. And you talk about it, you know, and I know a lot of your story, you've got a diverse story of people in your congregation, but a lot of it probably comes out of the church minority. But how does that relate church hurt? And you see it a lot in the Black church. And I'm wondering if the story's similar to even, you know, some of our white brothers and sisters and people that I dealt with. Because when you said that, I was like, man, I'm all over church hurt. I was like, I get it. When you said it, I was like, he nailed it. He nailed it.
Yeah. Man, church hurt that's literally probably like 80 or 90% of our church. Like people coming from different denominations and having these experiences. And me and my wife have talked about it. My wife had some experiences. I've had some experiences to where, and I believe that it happens across the board, white church, Black church, when people get into a place where self-righteousness begins to go to the forefront, you start to belittle other people. So one of the things about grace that makes grace so amazing is that it evens the playing field for everybody, right? So I don't have to perform. But a lot of times in a lot of churches, especially a lot of law-based churches, it's all about performance. You know, it's all about how often you show up at church and how long you pray, how you pray. You know, did you get married before you had sex, or did you have a child out of wedlock? You know, those things that, you know, we tend to put up as barriers and saying that we're stopping people from like having this relationship with God, because that's really what it is. We're trying to say that you're not good enough to have a relationship with God like I am because of all of the good things that I've done. But the thing is, we all know
we didn't do it.
Yeah, right.
We didn't do it. It wasn't about us.
Man, I heard somebody say, he said, if you're not the biggest sinner you know, then that's a problem.
That's a problem. Yeah.
Because you're with yourself 24/7, man. You know, the thoughts that you have in your mind, like Jesus even said himself, he said, even if you look upon a woman, you've already committed adultery. The fact that you had a thought,
you've done it. You're in.
You've already done it.
Well,
so maybe you didn't have the thought about adultery, but you had the thought when the person cut you off in the car that you were going to cuss them out.
Sure, you've already committed murder.
Yeah, it's one of the things
In
where
the heart.
it evens
Yeah.
the playing field, you know,
Yeah.
and we attack that so hard because we want people to understand that, like, our idea is to give you Jesus. We know Jesus is going to change your heart. But when we come up against church hurt, a lot of people when they meet me and Kris, they don't know what to expect.
Yeah.
So they're just like tripping over, oh, I forgot to call you pastor, or
First
can
lady,
I do this? And I'm
first
sitting here like,
because in the black church isn't first lady kind of the thing too, like pastor.
Normally it's like a first lady thing, lady or first lady.
Yeah.
And I'm sitting, and me and Kris, we're sitting here like,
gosh,
please
regular
don't.
folks. Yeah.
We're just, you know, we're doing what
it
we're
all
called to
away.
do.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we don't allow people to even push us out there to make us feel like, oh, you're the pastor, so you need to do. Nah, man, it's like, we cut all of that off. We're not those type of people, and I get it. I mean, you know, there's different denominations that do different things, but
Sure.
But we attack church hurt so much because we've seen so many people broken by it.
It's so
You know,
huge. Yeah. Yeah. And Rob, I will tell you, this is, by the way, what you're describing to me is very universal then, because
Yeah.
that's something that I think the congregations I dealt with, which were certainly more majority white, although we had some diversity and we had some single moms, and we had different people that would come into our church, but even the church that I kind of grew up in, but you know, that was super universal, this idea of church hurt, and that's self-righteousness that comes over, that, you know, you got to do more than I do. You know, you're not doing what I do, even though, you know, those people are just, it's all for show. We know what goes on behind the house. I mean, you know, or behind, behind the doors, you know, none of it's all kind of a facade. And, and it's unfortunate it goes out that way. But, you know, I remember when I was speaking, I used to a lot of times wear, because Paul, you know, said, be all things to all people to win some. And so I used to wear a hat. I'd wear my hat. I'd wear it backwards. I had tattoos.
I remember seeing this.
I would say prayers. I'd say prayers with my hat on, which, you know, in church I grew up in was like, that's super, you know, like disrespectful and all this. And I'm like, show me the scripture that says I got to take my hat off, you know?
Right.
Now when I'm with people, Christians that I know predominantly hat off people, I do respect that, and I take my hat off. But when I was in Atlanta speaking to people that were of all these different cultures, I was like, I'm trying to break church hurt and tell you that this is okay. You know, we started in a church that was in Little Five Points, in a theater that was run completely by the LGBTQ community.
I remember.
I can remember the guy that ran the church. He took me through a tour of the church. I can remember being in this coffee shop that was attached to the church, and in bubble letters had the word adultery on it. And I thought either they support it or it's just a coffee. But I said, either way, Jesus wants us to be here. And that guy took us through the church, and he said, I've got some issues with y'all on scheduling being in this theater, and et cetera, et cetera. And we really were fortunate. It's truly God driven to even be there, and divine, you know, intervention in that. But at the very end, he said, I got 3 issues. At the very end, I said, well, what's your 3rd issue? We can get past the other 2. And he said, and I just hate churches. And I thought, and I said, you know what? I do too. Yeah. I was like, I get exactly the church you're talking about. You know?
I know exactly.
And I hope we're totally different. And you know, years after we had been there, that guy called me up, and we would meet. They had 2 different stages. One fit like 50, and as our church grew, he said, well, I'm gonna let you go into the bigger auditorium, or the bigger main stage. And he said, I'm gonna give you that for the same amount as the backstage. And I was like, oh man, it's such a blessing. Thank you so much. So we moved in, and we even brought people in to help clean it up and paint it and all this. It's great stuff. I mean, I've got tons of stories, as I know you do too. But to wrap this one up, then months down the road, he calls me back in. He says, hey, I'm going to end up giving you to this. And he cut my rate in half on top of what he'd already given me, the bigger one, and he cut it on half. And he said, y'all doing so much good down here, I'm going to cut it in half. And he told me he was an atheist. And as I kept talking to him, he shared with me he had become agnostic, which I felt God was just moving the needle, right?
Yeah.
Agnostic. I was like, hey, we're doing something, you know. And then he said, then when he cut my rent in half, I said, listen, brother, I'm going to have to tell people you're a tithing member of our church now. And he said, if you do that, you're kicked out. So, but, but all that was this idea that we went in with, and I know you guys do it that same way, but, God judges, the Holy Spirit convicts, we love, right? It's not like, it's not my job. I don't have to change. I can't change one person.
And I don't want to.
And I'm glad I'm not God. I'm glad I don't have that. That's exactly right. That's exactly
right. People hurt you. And you can expect people to do better. And when they fall short, you can get mad, or you can just say, you know what, God, you still love them. They're still here. Maybe they're not, but you still love them. One of the biggest things that I feel like in the church is that we feel like salvation is like a 15-second prayer. And we try to just say, like, if you don't say this prayer with me now in 15 seconds, you're not going to get saved. Right. Man, there's some relationships that need to be built, just like the relationship that you're talking about. Yeah. There are relationships that need to be built that might take a month, a year, 10 years. Sure. God isn't throwing those people away just because they're kind of like, because we don't know what their experience was. Well, we want everybody to have the same experience that we have, when that's not true. A lot of people have gone through different places where, you got the church where the women can't wear pants. We just talked about earlier the church where the women can't even be in the pulpit. Yeah. We got all these different, the legalistic and all these different things. So we don't know what people's experience is. Yep. But if we could just take a moment to look at people with the eyes of Jesus, that's it. Look at people, love people where they are, joke with them, laugh with them, whatever, continue to pray with them, because then they're really seeing Jesus for who he really is when you're looking at him that way. You're not trying to throw any type of scripture at them and all this type of stuff, because that's what pushes people further away. Absolutely. When Jesus who was it? I think it was Matthew, when he recruited Matthew invited him to a party. It wasn't a lot of priests or people at the party. Yeah. It was a bunch of tax collectors. Absolutely. Tax collectors were like the grimiest people there. There was probably prostitutes.
It might have said drug dealers. Is why that relate it to today, right? I mean, yeah.
Right.
Yeah, for sure.
So
although most of us don't like tax collectors, though. And
what do you say?
I said most of us don't like tax collectors either. So, but no offense to all my friends that work at the IRS. We know you just.
I know, right? No offense,
it ain't the same tax collectors. We mean these guys were worse than them.
Yeah, no, these guys were way worse.
They betrayed their entire heritage to be a tax collector.
Exactly.
That was the difference there. Yeah.
Exactly. So when we kind of look at Jesus, we kind of make Jesus this like 2D version.
Yeah. Right.
We don't insert him in our lives. We don't insert him in other people's lives. And when we don't do that, we kind of make things cookie cutter and make things, you got to do it our way, and that's it.
Yeah. That goes back to that point I was telling you earlier about that Jesus, that my relationship with Jesus is going to be different than your relationship.
Right. Exactly.
Right. It goes back to that idea. I think of when Jesus returned and he rose, or it's not returned, but when he rose again, and the disciples saw him, and some of them had seen him, and some of them, and then he disappeared, and all of these different things, and they're just confused. They don't know what's going on. They go down to the beach, they go out to fish, and then all of a sudden they look at somebody on the shore, and he yells out to them, "Hey, have you caught anything?" To which they're like, "Not yet." And he says, "Hey, throw your net on the other side." I always think that, to me, that was that, it's like if I'm out there and I see this guy yelling, "Throw it on the other side," I remember the story of Jesus performing the miracle of casting the net on the other side and hauling in the fish. And immediately when they hear that, they drop what they're doing and they run to Jesus. Because it's like it clicks, and it's like, there's my friend. There's my friend. There's the guy that jokes with me, or it's like Jesus had this inside joke. It's like that inside joke with your friends, like, "Hey, knuckleheads, throw it on the other side,"
Exactly.
but we forget that. And we have this pious Jesus, this Jesus that wouldn't laugh at your jokes or wouldn't, but no, we have this friend that isn't out there going, that's got this, like Santa Claus, like I'm keeping up with all your good and bad, like he's not channeling all this. He's championing all of this.
Yeah.
And that's what we forget so much.
Man, I think about that scripture, and I think it's that scripture that when they got to shore, like he had dinner prepared.
Yeah, that's right. That's exactly right. Yeah.
Jesus he just died and rose again. Right now, if you or I
defeated death,
we would be like, "Oh man, I'm back. I'm getting y'all. I'm back." Right?
I'd be hovering above the ground. I'd be hovering above the ground.
Exactly.
I'd have sticks through my hand. Like, look at this.
Just wilding out, right? But
the
first thing he does is he goes to hang out with his friends and he fixes them dinner.
I know.
Man.
So relatable.
If people can get that and not make this pious, this corny, dry, like that's not who Jesus is. And it's one of those things where, like, if we can just start having an understanding of who Jesus really is, then lives will be changed.
No doubt.
I talked to people who just was like, nah, I'm good, whatever. Friends that are like, nah, I'm good. And then when I sit down and I actually have a conversation with them and not beat them over the head, just random conversations here and there, then they might start asking me about certain things. And over time, their heart is opened up to something to that they were just so staunchly against. But it's because I'm not presenting Jesus in a way that's not, like you said, relatable.
Yeah.
He's relatable. He's 100% relatable.
I was telling somebody the other day and having a conversation, and I told him, I said, biblical principles work whether you believe them or not. So
exactly.
I said, so, you can be really nice to your wife. I promise it's going to be good for you, and you can raise good kids. I promise you, you provide discipline and protection and encouragement. It's going to be good for you. I promise you, it's going to benefit you. If you raise a child up the way you should go, I promise you that's going to be good for you. I promise you, if you're nice to coworkers, it's going to be really, really incredible for you. And so, but one of the things is I said, and I promise you, if you pray, it'll be interesting. Mm-hmm. You don't have to even believe.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you just start praying. And you can just say, if there's a creator out there, what's it like? And just have that conversation. I used to tell people all that time, just why don't you just pray? Why don't you just start praying? You don't even have to believe. Just start praying and see what that does in your life, And so, but biblical principles work whether you believe them or not. And that's the beauty of Jesus, because he loves us and he cares for us. Right. We're his kids. Whether you believe it or not, he created you, and he created all of us in his image, which, talking about even the racial divide that we went through, that was a hashtag I remember seeing when I think Ahmaud Arbery was killed and murdered. That was image bearers was the hashtag I remember seeing. And boy, that pricked my heart like no other, was this idea. And that's true. We are all image bearers of our creator. And man, I just hope you keep doing what you and your wife, Kris, are doing. And I want you to know I'm praying for you all the time. I'm going to give you the last word, but I want to share kind of one other scripture that kind of really hit me in all this stuff that we're doing. And I want to tell you, I got this scripture that hit me because you posted it today, but it was from Micah chapter 6, and you posted it today, and I thought, man, I'm going to dive into Micah and reread this and go through it again. But I thought it was interesting. I jumped back to verse 7 because I thought verse 7 is pretty interesting when they were asking the prophet, like, kind of, should we offer, like they've done bad, right? And it's like, should we offer him, talking about God, should we offer him thousands of rams and 10,000 rivers of olive oil? Should we sacrifice our firstborn children to pay for our sins, which the reply, which is this church hurt, right? It's this church hurt. It's like, no, oh people, the Lord has told you what is good, and this is what he requires of you. To do what is right, to love mercy, and to walk humbly with your God. And man, you know, there's a lot of ways to cut this faith thing, but that sums it up pretty good. And I've always believed that when we all get to heaven, I think we'll have this great big belly laugh, and I said this too, and we'll laugh because we'll go, man, we made this thing so hard. We made this so hard. We made this so hard. And some of us that may have thought they weren't good enough to get ahead, there'll be some surprises too. You go, oh, you're here. They're gonna look at you and go, oh, you're here. You know, so they're gonna be
like, oh, okay.
But you know, we're gonna laugh because we go, well, wow, we made this Christian life so hard. I want to give you kind of any final thoughts you may have, and then I want to pray for you and your wife and your church. And before I give you the final thought, I just want you to know, man, I love you. I love your wife. I love your kids. I haven't met your wife and your children, but I want you to know, I know when y'all come to the Gulf Coast, you got a place to stay. You know, you can hit me up. You got my number, so give me those digits.
Yes, sir.
We'd love to entertain you, host you, and get you out on the water with us and all that good stuff and have a good time.
Yes, sir. Look, I was about to take you up on it. You know, our anniversary is coming up in a couple of weeks, and we were thinking about coming down there. But we ended up, you know, we got somewhere else, man. But definitely take you up on that. I love you, man.
Well, this beach ain't going anywhere.
Yeah, exactly. You know, I definitely I appreciate you having me on, and I'm so thankful for the God relationships that he's placed in my life, because you and I haven't talked a lot, but it's something when we see each other on social media and we have that respect and understanding, like, man, that's a man of God. That's a man of God. Absolutely. That's somebody who, and that has always resonated with me. So, you know, it's like, wow, like it's really been like 5 years, you know what I mean? So it's just, it's amazing. It's amazing. So I'm definitely appreciative of it. And I'm appreciative of you know, not appreciative, I'm saying I'm looking forward to what else God has in store, you know, for the both of us. What you're doing is good. I definitely support it 100% because everything starts at a conversation.
Absolutely.
Everything starts at a conversation. All business deals start at a conversation. Dating starts at a conversation. Everything in life starts at a conversation. Yep. And just by you being able to say, hey, you know what, I have a platform. Let me share, because you have an understanding that a lot of people don't, you know, so continue doing that. Let me encourage you to just continue doing it.
Thank you.
I know it's work. I know it's difficult. I know you'll lose people in the process, but I know you'll gain so much as well.
That's right.
And even those people, you know, you planting a seed that maybe they don't receive it now, they will. Because that's how God does. God lets, you know, us plant the seed, but he's the one that always gives the increase.
Absolutely.
And the seed is incorruptible.
Amen.
So, just keep doing what you're doing. I know for me, I've been in this place where being a pastor in this time is very interesting. We're in the middle of a pandemic. And people can't meet. We're in the middle of a lot of racial tension. And it just seems like there's so much disarray going on. But I just have this eternal feeling like God is working everything out. I have this feeling like there's things that have to be exposed before they get better. I have a cousin who broke his arm, and he broke his leg, and he never went to the doctor to get it fixed. And it healed, but he has a limp. And they needed to fix and put everything back the way it was in order for it to heal properly. And so I feel like we're in this place as a nation, and we're feeling like things are healed, but they haven't been fixed. And so by having these conversations of saying, hey, before when the healing has to begin, there's some things that need to be fixed. So what happens? We have the conversation. What happens? We challenge each other to grow. What happens? We take a step back and we look at this gospel that we've been teaching, right? This thing that we always assumed we were always going to be in a church. Now we're not in the church. That doesn't change the goodness of God. That doesn't change the word. We have to get before God and figure out, okay, how does all of this fit? You know, so we have to get before God and say, okay, how are we going to fix this? How are we going to fix the community still? How are we going to fix each other still? How are we going to fix the racial divide? How are we going to get people healed from being sick? Like these are the things we got to get before the Father before the healing can actually take place.
That's super strong, brother. Super strong.
If we don't, then we will be seen as walking with the limp. Then like we want to force people back into church.
Yeah.
And that's good. I understand we all need to go to church, but God is so amazing that he allowed the pandemic to go on while we have access to social media and streaming for low cost.
Yeah, right. And do church. And do church.
Right.
It couldn't be a better design for a home church than what's going on right now, right? It couldn't be designed. I mean, there's going to be something that rises out of this that will be a different look. I think people are and people will go back to traditional churches, but there will be something different that rises out of this for sure.
Right, there will. And then the way that I believe God, he's just saying, just get before me so we can fix things. Don't try to gloss over things. Don't try to make things heal when they're not. Like there's some things that really need to be addressed. And I believe that in a way, you know, I know he didn't cause the pandemic, but of course, whatever the enemy means for bad, God means for good.
He's going to use it for sure.
Yeah. And so the pandemic is where it's where you have to do a lot of self-reflection now because, you know, maybe you were just trained, you know, just I need to go to church, but your relationship with God really, really wasn't what it was. But now you're forced to actually have that relationship with God because you can't go to church. You can't be around people. God is doing a lot of this stuff, a lot of this peeling back with racism and stuff like that. Like a lot of this stuff is happening. I believe God is allowing it to happen so we can fix things and we can heal better. We can heal and be whole and complete.
Actually fix the injury.
Fix the injury.
Fix the brokenness completely.
Yeah. And I believe, you know, we hear, you know, Jesus is coming back for a church without spot or wrinkle. What does that mean? I believe that there's a lot of things that's been covered up to where we feel like it's you know, clean, but it's really not. And so there's some internal issues, but I just know God. I know God is leading us to something great and grand. And I have this peace on the inside of me that there's so much good that's going to come out of this, man, over the next few years.
I agree.
If I could share with you just the dreams that God has given me about different things that it would completely blow your mind because I'm seeing a lot of it unfold right now. And I'm just sitting here like, God, you're so amazing.
Absolutely.
And I'm thankful. I'm just thankful. I'm thankful. So those who are my last words.
Yeah, man.
You know,
well, listen, let's fix it. That's absolutely right. Let's fix it. And I think you hit the nail on the head. God's got something bigger. He's going to use every brokenness we have to his glory. Yeah. And we can learn from that. In fact, that's the best testimonies are the brokenness. And so we're going to have these incredible testimonies that come out of this. I just pray that we continue to listen to each other. We continue to lean into each other. Let me pray for you guys. And
yes,
man, I just want you to know I'm here for you. I hope that the conversations we've had that in the past, but I hope they continue to get better. And so you've got my number. I've got your number. If there's anything I can do for you aside from the vacation spot, but anything I can do for you, please let me know. And those that are listening, you know, it's the Bar Church. I'm going to post a link to his website. If you're looking for a great place to go and worship, or you're at home with COVID and maybe you've listening to a guy or don't have somebody to listen to, I'm telling you, Rob McNair and his wife, Kris McNair, they are fabulous people that if you've listened at all to just 5 seconds of what he's had to say about grace, they are spot on about the idea that you are always, you may feel you're far away from God, but he is always right there with you. And so they have that nailed, and my stamp of approval for sure. And so if you need to dive in, I tell you to check out his messages. And if you want to find a place to support, if you're looking, that's the other thing too. If you're looking for a church to support, especially if you're saying, look, I want to try to help other minority churches or in minority communities or ways to do that, this is a church that you can feel confident in the transparency that they have and what they're doing in their community and how they're using their funds. I mean, if you saw how these guys take 2 nickels and make it work, it's not quite the 5 loaves, but and fish story, but it's close.
Good,
it's close what y'all do. So I just want to give you guys, and again, if you're watching, please, I'll underneath this video, I always have a little commentary, but I'm going to put their website link to all that so that these people can hopefully reach out to you if there's people that want to. But I'm going to pray for you guys right now. Father, thank you so much for Rob and Kris and their church, the Bar Church, their 2 children, Father, their family. I thank you for who they are in you. I thank you for the simplicity of their faith, but I thank you for the organization of their faith and how they are dedicated to this Christ follower movement, this grace movement. And I just thank you for, in spite of everything that they go through, they still see the glory of God. Father, I just pray that you protect them, you protect their children, you protect the 2 of them, you protect their congregation and those around them, and their friends and their family. I pray for their safety during COVID. I pray for their safety during the social unrest and the racial issues that are out there. Father, I pray that you continue to watch over them. You continue to hold them tight, Father. But I pray, though, that you break down those barriers that are there for them in the church, Lord, that and in their communities. I pray that you break down those barriers, and that the people that have come in contact with them, that you go ahead and do a mighty work in their hearts before they even enter their building, before they even hear from Rob and Kris. Because God, if as you can only do in softening the hearts, the message will come through loud and clear. But Father, I also pray that you find people around them that continue to encourage them, that can continue to support them, and continue to build them up. I pray for the resources for their church, that you continue to make it bountiful and plentiful, and that they never run out. But thank you, Jesus, for thank you, Jesus, for you. Thank you, Jesus, for who you are. Thank you for what you did, and thank you for how you show us the way. We thank you for your grace for us. In your name we pray. Amen.
Yes, Lord. Amen.
Absolutely, brother. Well, listen, this was super uplifting. I mean, I'm encouraged talking with you, man. I feel like I need to do another sermon somewhere or something. I haven't spoken from the pulpit in quite some time. This is now my new little church here, having these little conversations, this polling of faith, this temperature of faith. I can do it a little differently in the comfort of my home or on vacation or whatever. So I got the easy road here, but man, after talking to you, man, it's like, oh my gosh, I have all these ideas for sermons now. It's crazy. Yeah.
Man, do with it what you will, man. Do it. Hey, look, when things kind of go over, man, I might even have you come up and address us, man. And
absolutely, be glad to do that. Be glad to do that. Listen, I anything I can do for you, I'll be in touch with you. Though I've got some thoughts of how maybe I can help you just in listening to this. So it has nothing to do with me. But I got some thoughts. So I'll reach out to you after we get offline in the next few days. But man, I love you. Tell your wife I said hey. Hope you get to see you in Florida someday.
Yes, sir. Love you too. Have a blessed one.
Cheers, brother. Thanks, man.
All right.
Bye-bye.